Good morning. I think you can hear me, yes? Good morning, you all. I was not supposed to make the introduction of my colleague, my dear colleague, Professor Nozomu Kawai, who will address the first keynote address. And but our colleagues were lost on the way, and I think she's coming, Gabi. I was just about. Please welcome our colleague Gabriel Pique, who will chair this session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and sorry for being late, but yeah, being very German, not in time. So it's really my very great pleasure to be here today, that it finally comes true. We have been discussing this, and Roger asked us a little bit to get involved as ICOM CPAC. And so today it's really the biggest pleasure to open this wonderful conference on, I think, a very, very important topic as well. Last year, the world discussed the discovery of Tutankhamun and this unique treasure. But nevertheless, one of the main persons in this discovery is Howard Carter, which is of course linked to Lisbon, but also many other collections. And therefore it's an important topic that was not so much discussed last year. So it's a perfect time, since there are also many jubilees to come up in the next 10 years. As you know, Carter took a lot of time to bring all the objects out of the tomb. So I guess we will face a lot of Howard Carter, Tutankhamun in the coming years. But it's very nice to be here today, and it's the greatest pleasure to present our first keynote speaker here. I think to this distinct audience, I probably have not to introduce him very much, since, as you all know, Professor Nozomu Kawai is one of the experts on the topic Tutankhamun. He did his BA and MA in Waseda University, but then moved on to the United States and made his Ph.D. in Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And his very topic was actually the time of Tutankhamun. So he has been working on this topic since many years by now, and we look very much forward to the publication, which will open up new minds, I think, on this very topic. And being a representative of ICOM here today, I also want to point out that Nozomu is not only an expert in administration and the time and the history of Tutankhamun and the treasure of Tutankhamun, he's also the head of the archaeological mission in North Saqqara. And he nevertheless is also, or has been in charge of museums issues and exhibitions. And ICOM CPAC actually owes him a wonderful conference in 2019 in Tokyo and Kyoto. So without further ado, I give the floor to our first keynote speaker, Nozomu. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Gabi, for a wonderful introduction. So let me start my talk. Before that, good morning, everybody. Bon dia. Bon dia. Dear friends, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm greatly honored to be invited to present the first keynote lecture for the excellent international colloquium entitled Howard Tutankhamun and Carter, on the centennial anniversary of the official opening of the burial chamber of Tutankhamun's tomb. I just experienced the longest flight in my life, from the far east to the far west of the vast Eurasian continent. I'm also pleased to be in Portugal, where was the first country in the West with which Japan had contact. I hope my talk will stimulate the discussions about Tutankhamun's tomb for the rest of the conference. Despite the extraordinary number of objects from Tutankhamun's tomb have come down to us, Tutankhamun remains an enigmatic figure. However, they have contributed significantly to our understanding of the reign of King Tutankhamun and his predecessors, and brought vital evidence to consider the situation in the aftermath of the Amarna period. This paper discusses some of the critical objects from Tutankhamun's tomb that indicate the political and religious situation in the aftermath of the Amarna period, together with other related objects. The first part concerns Tutankhamun's immediate predecessor, Neferneferuaten, while the second part pertains to the early reign of Tutankhamun/Tutankhamun. Egyptologists have speculated on identifying a female ruler, Neferneferuaten, and the placement of her reign in the Amarna period for years. The evidence of Neferneferuaten from the tomb of Tutankhamun has puzzled our understanding of the king's identification as male or female. In the first part of my paper, I will reevaluate some object with the name Neferneferuaten from the Tutankhamun tomb and the other evidence from Amarna and Thebes to understand the Neferneferuaten's identification and the change in her status. In 1928, Percy Newberry suggested that Sumenkara, whose great royal wife was Meritaten, the eldest daughter of Akhenaten, and Neferneferuaten were the same person. This assumption is based on a box fragment, Carta 1K, found in the debris filling the staircase of Tutankhamun's tomb. Naming together Akhenaten, Neferneferuaten, and Meritaten. Many scholars follow this idea until the late 1980s. Even more recently, Barry Kemp still believes that Sumenkara and Neferneferuaten are the same male person, and Meritaten was his wife, without admitting Neferneferuaten bore the epithet Achet and Hes, beneficial for her husband. That proves that Neferneferuaten was a female king. He noted that the cartouche of Neferneferuaten with the epithet Achet and Hes, beneficial for her husband, which I will explain later, stands for the new name of Meritaten. In 1974, John Harris suggested that Neferneferuaten/Sumenkara was a woman, since there is a female form, Ankhet Kheperi Ra. Because Neferneferuaten was the epithet of Nefertiti, he believed that Nefertiti was the co-regent of Akhenaten. In 1994, Jim Allen proposed Sumenkara and Neferneferuaten were the different kings, suggesting that Neferneferuaten was Nefertiti. He observed that Sumenkara's prenomen is Ankheperi Ra without an epithet, while Neferneferuaten's prenomen is written with an epithet. In 1978, Rolf Krauss maintained that Neferneferuaten/Sumenkara was a male ruler, and his wife, Meritaten, ascended to the throne as King Ankhet Kheperi Ra between the death of Akhenaten and the enthronement of Neferneferuaten. In 1998, Mark Gabold argued that cartouches of Neferneferuaten, which were read as having the epithet Meri Akhet Aten, bore the epithet Akh en Hes, beneficial for her husband. Thus, now it is confirmed that Neferneferuaten was a female ruler. Gabold identified Neferneferuaten as Meritaten, since he believed Nefertiti had already passed away. However, it is now apparent that Akhenaten and Nefertiti were still the royal couples near the end of the reign of Akhenaten because of the discovery of year 16 graffiti of Akhenaten in Deir Abu Hinis near Beersheba. This evidence supports the proponents who believe that King Neferuaten is Nefertiti. On the other hand, Tawfik, Thomas, and Hagen Bass Reichelt recently argued that Neferuaten is Meritaten, which agrees with Gabold's theory, based on their research on the newly discovered royal tunic among the objects from Tutankhamun's tomb, which I will discuss later. In 2019, Valerie Angeno proposed that there were two Neferuaten who were identified with Meritaten and Neferuaten Tasheri. She believes that Akhenaten married Meritaten to prepare her to one day rule, but some inscriptions also indicate he was going to another daughter, Neferuaten Tasheri, for rule. She said they jointly ascended to the throne under common name Neferuaten. Several objects found in Tutankhamun's tomb have been identified as having been intended originally for someone else. John Harris suggested that at a conference after Tutankhamun in 1990 that most of them had been initially prepared for the burial of Amenhotep IV / Akhenaten and Neferuaten. Now, I shall give an overview of objects with the name of Neferuaten in the tomb of Tutankhamun that were relevant to the discussion on her identity and status. I will not include any object attributed to Neferuaten without her name. An inscribed strip from the lid of the box, Carta number 1K, as you see on this slide, found in the debris filling in the staircase of Tutankhamun's tomb. This has a most intriguing inscription. Two kings, both Akhenaten and Neferuaten, are mentioned together with the great royal wife Meritaten. On the knobs, the cartouches are those of Neferuaten, for whom it is likely that the box was intended, and notably, the cartouches were not altered. In this instance, the prenomen of Neferuaten is Anheperura Meri Neferheperura, and the nomen is Neferuaten Meri Ua En Ra. The names of Akhenaten and Neferuaten mentioned together might indicate their coregency. There is another strip of a box from Tutankhamun's tomb that originally bore an inscription of the prenomen and nomen of Neferuaten and the name of Meritaten, which was later altered for Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamun. From the text, one might suggest that Meritaten is the wife of Neferuaten. Gabold indicated that Neferuaten and Meritaten were the same individuals, based on his interpretation of the text of the box fragment, Carta number 1K, as presented in the last slide. If they are the same person, it is difficult to understand that she is mentioned as both king and queen simultaneously. Calouste suggested that Neferuaten and Semenkara were the same and that a male king married Meritaten. However, Calouste's argument does not work because Neferuaten is a female king, as Gabold demonstrated. The only other choice for the identification of Neferuaten is Nefertiti. Then, how can we explain this strange evidence that Neferuaten made Meritaten her great royal wife? Van der Pelle suggested that Meritaten kept the title she gained while marrying Semenkara. If the epithet of Neferuaten is written as Akhet-en-Hes, beneficial for her husband, then this king can be understood as a female ruler. However, both inscription on the box diminish the femininity of Neferneferuaten. We will look at other objects to clarify this obscurity later. The golden nut pectoral Carta number 261P1 was also reused for the funerary of Tutankhamun. Carter noted that Tutankhamun's cartouche replaced the earlier ones containing the name of Akhenaten. Yet, Gabold successfully demonstrated that cartouche re-inscribed with Tutankhamun's nomen and prenomen were those of Neferneferuaten, with a variation of Ankheperura Meri-Uaenra and Neferneferuaten Akhet-en-Hes, beneficial for her husband, proving Neferneferuaten was a female king who was at the same time the wife of Akhenaten. The femininity of the king is also supported by the female form of the justified, Mat Keru, under the prenomen Ankheperura Meri-Uaenra. The main inscription is an adaptation of the formula 777b from the pyramid text, indicating the return to orthodoxy that the country underwent when the pectoral was produced during the Neferuaten's reign. Traces of cartouches of Neferuaten are also identified underneath the cartouches of Tutankhamun on the 4 miniature golden coffins. Gabold and Aren detected the epithet Akhet-en-Hes, beneficial for her husband, in Neferneferuaten's nomen on these canopy coffinets. Mostly, the nomen is Neferneferuaten Akhet-en-Hes, and the prenomen is Ankheperura Meri-Uaenra. However, there are other combinations such as Ankheperura Meri-Neferkeperura and Ankheperura Akhet-en-Hes. In 2012, von Haruk identified a further spelling of Neferneferuaten's prenomen Ankheperura Merit-Neferkeperura on the external trappings of the mummy of Tutankhamun. This new spelling provides yet another variant showing the femininity of Neferneferuaten. A pair of blue faience bracelets belonging to Neferneferuaten, together with a faience bracelet of Akhenaten, was found in the annex of Tutankhamun's tomb. On both the bracelets of Neferneferuaten, the king's cartouches were inscribed on gilded plaster, and Neferneferuaten's nomen, Neferuaten Akhet-en-Hes, is inscribed on the left, while on the right, the prenomen of Ankheperura Meri-Neferkeperura is inscribed. Notably, this pattern of the prenomen of Neferneferuaten also appears on the lid of the box Carta number 1K, where Akhenaten is mentioned along with Meritaten. Akhenaten's bracelet, Carta number 620-40, has precisely the same dimensions as the 2 bracelets of Neferneferuaten's, and the designs and decoration of all 3 are strikingly similar. Gabold argued that Neferneferuaten's epithet Akhet-en-Hes was probably used after Akhenaten's death as an allusion to Isis's relationship with her deceased husband Osiris. But he identified the bearer of the title as Meritaten. However, it seems unlikely that the bracelet was produced for a king who already passed away, and it is more reasonable to presume that both Neferneferuaten's bracelet and Akhenaten's bracelet were produced at the same time during their colligency. Therefore, I suggest that the epithet Akhenhes, beneficial for her husband, was obtained when Neferneferuaten was co-regent of Akhenaten. During the sole reign of Neferneferuaten, she also used other epithets. Sometimes she replaced the name of Akhenaten with the Aten or used an additional variant nomen. There are 3 golden sequins presumed to have come from the Tomb of Tutankhamun, though Carter records none. I suggest that the reading of the cartouches on the sequin in the National Museums of Scotland, Edinburgh, should be Ankh Khepera Mary Aten, beloved of Aten, and Neferneferuaten Heka Mart, ruler of truth, rather than just Heka, which has been mentioned in the past by scholars such as Krauss and Harris. So, can you see the feather on the top of the head of Mart? What is important here is the sign of Mart is represented as a seated woman with a feather on her head. This is rarely attested during Akhenaten's reign. Instead, the signs of Mart were normally written with phonetic signs. Although the workmanship of the 2 sequins at the Nelson Atkins Museum in Kansas City is different from that of the sequins in Edinburgh, the names inscribed appear to be the same, but the sun disk of Aten is out of place and the reed leaf sign, Gardiner M17, faces inwards. In the organic laboratory of the Grand Egyptian Museum Conservation Center, several folded and unopened textiles were recently examined and conserved for the future display in the Tutankhamun Gallery at the Grand Egyptian Museum. Among them, a decayed tunic was found that bears very interesting woven pattern of lotus flowers, shen rings, and falcon wings. Additionally, there are texts that name the epithet of the goddess Wajet from Buto that were part of a royal title represented on both sides of the tunic's collar, leading toward downwards from each shoulder on the right and the left sides of the chest, respectively. Tarek Tawfik and others identified the damaged cartouche on the left front side of the tunic and read it as Ankh Khepera and interpreted this as the prenomen of Semenkare due to the limited space for the following hieroglyphics. As far as I can determine from figure 7 in the article in MEDAIK, the signs of Ra, Khepera, and Ankh occupy almost the entire upper half of the cartouche, which allows the epithet to be written below. In the other examples of the vertical cartouches of Ankh Khepera with the epithet, these signs occupy almost the entire upper half of the cartouche as well. As for the prenomen of Semenkare, Ankh Khepera without an epithet, the signs of Ra, Khepera, and Ankh occupy almost 2/3 of the cartouche. Therefore, I suggest that cartouche belongs to Neferneferuaten rather than Semenkare. As far as I have investigated objects or monuments of Semenkare, there is nothing to suggest a return to orthodoxy. However, the return to traditional Egyptian religious beliefs is represented by the text and image of Wajet and Nekhbet. Neferneferuaten began the return to orthodoxy as graffito of Pawaf in Theban Tomb 139 notes, which will be discussed later. I believe that tunic was made for King Neferneferuaten, showing her birth name on the right front side, and her throne name Ankheperra with an epithet on the left front side, guarded by the crown goddess Wajet and Nekhbet, respectively. The numerous objects of Neferneferuaten in Tutankhamun's tombs are challenging to understand. Since Neferneferuaten was a direct predecessor of Tutankhamun, the latter should have been reasonable for the former's burial. Reeves and van der Perez suggested that Neferneferuaten was initially buried at Amarna and later moved to Thebes by Tutankhamun, and the new tomb might have been too small for all her funerary equipment. And thus, the remaining objects were modified for Tutankhamun. However, I would instead propose that Tutankhamun did not give Neferneferuaten credit as his predecessor and did not bury her properly as king, since Tutankhamun was dismissed as the legitimate successor of Akhenaten, while Neferneferuaten was ruling. Instead, the remaining unused funerary equipment prepared for her burial was eventually appropriated for Tutankhamun's burial, on such as the faience bracelet, sequins, and tunic, etc. In the case of tunic, however, Neferneferuaten's nomen was cut out and replaced by another piece of clothing, while her prenomen seems to have been untouched. The inheritance of tunic of the direct predecessor may have been significant for hereditary and legitimation of the kingship, as a tunic with the name of Amenhotep II was found in the tomb of Thutmose IV. This can be, however, interpreted as an heirloom or as personal memento related to ancestry and legitimation. However, the reason for removing Neferneferuaten's nomen is not clear. Now I would like to pay attention to the evidence of Neferneferuaten outside Tutankhamun's tomb. A block from Hermopolis presents the legs and feet of two kings on the same scale, followed by a smaller female, in 1/3 size, holding a sistrum. Gunther later suggested that these two kings are Akhenaten and Smenkhare because they wore kilts with royal sporrans with royal trimmings along their hems, exclusive regalia of kings. Jim Allen suggested that individuals on this block can be identified as King Neferneferuaten and Ankhesempaten, since another block inscribed with the name of two individuals may have been associated with this block. More recently, Ray Johnson succeeded in joining the fragments with the image of a female ruler to the second king, whom he identified as Nefertiti. As Gabolde suggested, there are prenomen and nomen of Akhenaten before the cartouches of Neferneferuaten, considering the depiction of two figures of the king. Therefore, two kings are Akhenaten and Neferneferuaten, and the princess is Ankhesempaten. Here, the epithet Neferneferuaten's nomen should be Mary something, in accordance with the nomen on the lids of the two boxes from the Tomb of Tutankhamun already discussed. Part of the private stela, known as the Collegiancy stela, found in the northern harem of Central Palace at Amarna, provides essential information on Neferneferuaten. On the right-hand top of the stela, 4 cartouches of two kings are presented. 2 cartouches give the prenomen and nomen of Akhenaten, while the other 2 are altars and refer to King Neferneferuaten. Originally, the name Nefertiti was written in the 3rd cartouche, followed by Meritaten. When the cartouches were altered, the name of Meritaten was removed, and the name of Ankhesempaten was added in the last column. Notably, sequence of the names after the alteration representing Akhenaten, Neferneferuaten, and Ankhesempaten correspond to the blocks from Hermopolis, which I just discussed in the last slide. Gabold regards this as a proof of the reign of Merituaten. Once she became king, her position as the eldest daughter would have been taken by Ankhesempaten. However, it can be assumed that Merituaten was no longer alive at the time before Akhenaten's death. Some seal impression on jar ceilings from Amarna in Berlin have the motifs of two seated figures of the same size under the sun disk, with a woman standing behind them. The seated figure on the left wears the blue crown, and his arm rests upon the companion's shoulder, probably another king. The woman standing behind the seated figure is portrayed with an enlarged back of the skull and resembles one of Akhenaten's princesses. Rader noted that a similar seal impression was found in house P47.5 and bore the name of Ankhesempaten. Therefore, these figures could have been those of Akhenaten, Neferneferuaten, and Ankhesempaten, which can correspond to the scenes of the reconstructed terracotta blocks from Hermopolis. If this assumption is correct, Merituaten is missing in this example again. Additionally, two seal impressions of another type clearly show two seated kings, one male and the other female. The seal impression displays a king wearing the blue crown, facing each other beneath the sun disk and holding hecascepters. I suggest that they represent Akhenaten and Neferneferuaten. A similar presentation of two kings is found on two unidentified stelae from Amarna, now in Berlin, depicting a male and female king who must be Akhenaten and Neferneferuaten. On the right, small unfinished private stela shows two figures in front of an offering table. They can be identified as Akhenaten and Nefertiti based on the type of crowns that they wore. While the first figure is wearing a bag wig and can presumably identified as Akhenaten, the second, smaller figure is wearing the flat-topped crown characteristic of Nefertiti. Four cartouches and the sun disk dominates the upper part of the scene. To the left of this, three cartouches were originally carved to identify the persons beneath. However, these were left blank. In a latter phase, a fourth blank cartouche was added. Four cartouches suggest the presence of two kings. Therefore, this stela shows evidence of the change of the status of Nefertiti from the queen to co-regent of Akhenaten. Neferneferuaten's presence in Amarna is well attested. The fragments of the mutual paintings from the walls of North Riverside Palace include the cartouches of Neferneferuaten. The nomen Neferneferuaten, Ak en he es, beneficial for her husband, and the prenomen Ankheperura, Meri Neferukeperu are mentioned as well. Akhenaten's name is also mentioned in the mutual fragments. Thus, this is also evidence to suggest that Neferneferuaten had epithet Ak en he es, beneficial for her husband, while she was a co-regent. Recently, fragments of the door jambs from the house of Ra Nefer were published, and the cartouches of Neferneferuaten are inscribed on them without referring to Akhenaten. Therefore, Neferneferuaten is the only royal name represented on the door jambs. Neferneferuaten's nomen is Neferneferuaten, Meri, Ua, and Ra, while the prenomen is Ankheperura, Meri, Nefer, Keperu, Ra, which are the same as inscribed on the previously mentioned boxes from Tutankhamun's tomb. The absence of the other persons indicates that she had become an independent ruler. The only dated inscription of Neferneferuaten is a graffiti of Pawa in Theban tomb 139. This text, a prayer to Amun, is dated in the 3rd year of Neferneferuaten and mentions the temple of Amun in the mansion of Ankheperura at Thebes. This suggests that Amun worship had been allowed by Neferneferuaten's regular year 3, the highest date of her reign. Another critical point in this graffiti is the form of Neferneferuaten's names. The epithet of the prenomen after the Ankheperura seems to have been as Merituaten, which several scholars have suggested. The reading of the prenomen of Neferneferuaten in year 3 graffiti can be supported by the readings of the prenomen Ankheperura Meri-Aten in the golden sequence of Neferneferuaten. In conclusion, the evidence suggests Nefertiti as the most reasonable choice for Neferneferuaten's identity. The cartouches of Neferneferuaten, written together with those of the great royal wife Merituaten on the 2 boxes from the Tutankhamun's tombs, were considered the best evidence of Neferneferuaten's identity as Sumenkara. On these inscriptions, Neferneferuaten's nomen is Neferneferuaten Meri Waren Ra, while the prenomen is Ankheperu Ra Meri Nefer Keperu Ra. Both were found in the inscription on other objects and the monuments that indicate Neferneferuaten's femininity. Thus, it does not necessarily mean that Neferneferuaten was a male king who was married to Merituaten. Instead, it can be interpreted that Akhenaten appointed Nefertiti as his co-regent after the demise of his male co-regent Sumenkare. Sumenkare's widowed queen, Merituaten, seems to have kept her title as his great royal wife. Simultaneously, Neferneferuaten obtained another epithet, Akhenhes, beneficial for her husband, which Gabold used to prove this king's female identity beyond doubt. According to Gabold, the epithet was probably used after Akhenaten's death. However, as I have demonstrated, it was used during the co-regency of Akhenaten and Nefertiti, showing her intimate relationship with her husband, her legitimacy as a co-regent of Akhenaten. After Akhenaten's death, Neferneferuaten continued in power as sole ruler for approximately 3 years. During her sole reign, Neferneferuaten obtained her epithet. She replaced the name of Akhenaten with reference to the Aten in her prenomen and nomen. The epithet of her prenomen was then Meri-Aten, beloved of Aten, while her nomen became Hekamat, ruler of truth, to legitimate her kingship as sole ruler. Now I would like to move on to the second part, which discusses the object bearing the name of Tutankhamun. Among the objects from Tutankhamun's tomb, there are several objects bearing the name of Tutankhamun, which was Tutankhamun's original name since he was a prince of Akhenaten and his second wife, Kir. As the movement of return to orthodoxy progressed, Tutankhamun changed his name to Tutankhamun. Eventually, accordingly, the artifacts which were produced early in his reign changed Tutankhaten name to Tutankhamun name. Yet, this change was partially rendered, while many original Tutankhaten names were retained in the same artifacts. Why did it happen? In this part of my lecture, I will investigate artifact with both Tutankhamun and Tutankhamun's name to answer the question. By the beginning of Tutankhamun's reign, both Amun and Aten seems to have been equally regarded as Egypt's state gods, as demonstrated by evidence from Neferneferuaten's sole reign. When Prince Tutankhaten ascended to the throne, he had already demonstrated his faith in Amun. A small limestone sphere, Berlin 14197, which is thought to have come from Amarna, shows Tutankhaten representing lotus bundles to Amun and Mut. The figure of the king is shown in the Amarna style and resembles that of Akhenaten. This is the first piece of evidence in which a successor of Akhenaten is depicted returning to orthodoxy. Howard Carter noted that from the fact that Aten and Amen elements occur side by side, it would appear that young king's return to the older face of Thebes was gradual in transition and not spontaneous, based on his study on the object from Tutankhamun's tomb. It has been suggested that Tutankhaten changed his name to Tutankhamun by year 4. However, I would suggest that Tutankhaten had two names simultaneously, Tutankhaten and Tutankhamun, at some point early in his reign, based on the inscribed object from his tomb. As Carter noted, Tutankhamun's return to orthodoxy seems to have been gradual in transition, compromising the cult of Amun and Aten at some point. Nevertheless, this was not worked out ultimately, bringing the complete damnatum memoriae of the cult of Aten and its followers. The golden throne from Tutankhamun's tomb features both Tutankhamun and Tutankhaten's and Tutankhamun's name. The names on the back panels were altered from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun and from Ankhesenaten to Ankhesenamen, and the king's prenomen on the inner surface of the left arm was changed to Tutankhamun. Other part of the name, however, remain unchanged. However, why not remove all the names of Tutankhamun and Ankhesenamen? Why was the throne representing the god Aten used and buried in Tutankhamun's tomb? The display of the display of both versions of the name of the young king and queen and the two cartouches of Aten on this important object cannot be an accident. Tutankhaten names on the back panel on the other surface of the right arm remain unchanged, while Tutankhaten name on the inner surface of the left arm was changed to Tutankhamun like that on the front of backrest. The same phenomenon can also be observed on the inlaid ebony throne from the tomb. On this throne, some cartouches include late form of the name Aten, but the sun disk is represented in the more traditional style of Egyptian orthodoxy. Its underside shows a winged neckbed belcher flanked by inlaid cartouches containing the prenomen and nomen of Tutankhaten. The geometric inlays on the back panel underneath the neckbed belcher contain 3 vertical columns of the text inscribed in ivory. The king is referred to as Tutankhaten, whereas 2 horizontal inscriptions engraved in ebony above and below bear only Tutankhamun form. The inscription on the back of the throne refer to the king Tutankhaten. Although Eaton Krause suggested that the Tutankhamun form inscribed the 2 ebony plates is an alternation of the Tutankhamun form. It appears that Tutankhamun form has been inscribed with hesitation on the back panel since the 8 out of the 10 nomen on this throne are written as Tutankhamun. In addition, the background covers of the inscription may have symbolic connotations. The Tutankhamun form occurs on an ebony band, while the Tutankhamun form appears on a contrasting one of ivory. Presumably, Aten, the sun disk, was represented in the right color of ivory, and Amun, the hidden one, was represented in the dark shade of ebony. It can be assumed that these structures were intentionally designed to ensure both forms of the king's name could coexist, even though Tutankhamun form may have been secondary addition. It is also notable that king's epithet, Sehetep Necheru, the one who pacified the gods, is inscribed together with Tutankhamun's name, while the latter home Aten's name is represented on the same throne. Tutankhamun likely intended to appease all the gods, including Akhenaten's god, at the beginning of his reign. It remains unclear just how long young king used these thrones, but it is apparent that, at least at the beginning of Tutankhamun's reign, the cult of Amun was accepted in some form by royalty who had formerly worshipped the sun disk under Akhenaten's reign. However, the change of the name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun does not seem to have been particularly certain about the throne. Instead, it appears that two homes coexisted in early years of his reign. If the Amun name had rapidly replaced the Aten home, one would expect to find a much more consistent alteration on the king's nomen on his thrones. Recently, a team of the German Archaeological Institute in Cairo, directed by Christian Ekman and Katia Borchardt, examined the golden appliques from the Tutankhamun's tomb, which were not studied in detail in the past. While some bear Tutankhamun's name only, this applique shows Tutankhamun wearing both upper and lower Egyptian crowns with the names of both Tutankhaten and Tutankhamun. The king's figures are similar to the style of Akhenaten's figure. While Tutankhamun and Neferneferuaten are represented in the middle of under the sun disk with two feathers, respectively, Tutankhaten and Neferneferuaten are shown in front of the figure of the king. It seems that all the decorations were rendered at the same time, as far as I observed their craftsmanship, which means there was no later addition to Tutankhamun's name. Therefore, the evidence also suggests that the young king had two names, Tutankhaten and Tutankhamun, simultaneously at some point early in his reign. Some object bearing the inscription indicating political religious atmosphere during the Tutankhamun's reign. Tutankhamun's upper scepter carried a vertical inscription that reads, "The perfect God, the well-beloved, one dazzling of the face like Aten when he shines, son of Amun, Neferneferuaten." Carter noted that this item was of particular interest as it suggests compromise between Aten and Amun creeds. This scepter may imply a political strategy that may have been intended to maintain the peaceful coexistence of Aten and Amun. The bearded skull cap, fitting tightly over the shaven head of the mummy of Tutankhamun, which shapes a vulture with outspread wings and Uraeus, emblem of Isis or Nephthys, bears cartouche containing a variant of early home of Aten name. One may wonder how it ended up on Tutankhamun's skull, since the Aten name's early home was used primarily before the year 9 of Akhenaten. This could reflect the volition of the widowed Queen Ankhesenamen, who was probably responsible for Tutankhamun's burial with eye. Even if it was initially made for one of the Tutankhamun's predecessors, as Eaton-Krause suggested, the reuse of such an essential item indicates pious devotion to Athens surreptitiously, a practice that would otherwise contradict public return to orthodoxy at the burial of Tutankhamun. It is reasonable that the name of Aten is inscribed on the skull cap because the head was equated with the sun in ancient Egypt, particularly with the egg, a symbol of the divine creation of the cosmos during the Amarna period. Notably, Tutankhamun's head attached to the skull cap with the name of Aten is hidden under the Tutankhamun's golden mask, which symbolizes Osiris. This also implies coexistence of the Aten and the traditional cult surreptitiously. It is known that during the early years of Tutankhamun, a continuation of separate Aten cult was still allowed, although at the same time the traditional cults were reinstalled. The temples of Aten in Memphis and Thebes functioned during the reign of Tutankhamun. Merira, the greatest of seers of Aten, returned to Memphis. Aten temple after Amarna was abandoned, where he retained the title of High Priest of Aten, but also gained the title of High Priest of Neith simultaneously. Other officials under Tutankhamun worked in the Temple of Aten in Memphis. Their tombs were found in Saqqara. Donald Redford noted that the new royal residence of Memphis constituted a sort of theological intermediate zone between the rigors of iconoclasm against Aten and the full sway of pluralism, wherein Aten enjoyed a symbolic relationship with other gods. In conclusion, I suggest the following remarks. Some inscribed objects from Tutankhamun's tomb, together with other evidence, suggest that there was probably reconciliation between the Aten cult and Amun cult at the beginning of Tutankhamun's reign, instead of radical backlash to the orthodoxy. The young king seems to have had two names, Tutankhaten and Tutankhamun, simultaneously at some point early in his reign, instead of sudden change of his name from Tutankhaten to Tutankhamun. The image of God Aten with his two didactic names was not expunged, at least in the object from Tutankhamun's tomb. Aten's name is inscribed in his bearded skull cap, lying directly on the king's shaved head. Even though it may have been initially made for one of his predecessors, it may have meant pious devotion to Aten surreptitiously while reinstalling traditional cults. It was reflected in his epithet, one who satisfies or pacifies all the gods, which suggested a political and religious strategy early in Tutankhamun's reign. So I'd like to show the major bibliography I presented. And I'd like to thank many institutions, and especially I'd like to thank Dr. Marian Eaton-Krause, who has been a really great consultant for my study on the reign of Tutankhamun. Thank you very much for your attention, and muito obrigado.
Thank you so much, Nozomu, for this very exciting overview on the challenging questions. Who are all these people? And I think you brilliantly also underlined how important the study and the thorough study of all these treasures from the tomb are, and that they can really add some crucial information for all these questions. So some of the names mentioned are also here in the audience. So I guess there are questions, comments, ideas on what Nozomu have presented. Nobody? Is everybody convinced? Yes.
So much, Nozomu. Remind me, Hekamat as an epithet, who else uses it? It's on the tip of my tongue, but I can't remember. Or is it a one-off?
Yeah, I think Thutmose III had this epithet after he became sole ruler, after the demise of Hatshepsut. Yeah. According to Jim Allen, in his article in the catalog of the Hatshepsut exhibition in the Metropolitan Museum Art. And I think there are several others. Yeah, when I checked the Ronald Leprechaun's, the book on the names of the kings, but I don't really remember. My brain is not really working well. Yeah.
And Akhenaten is usually, he's Ankh-Mart, living in Mart. That's
Mm-hmm.
he uses.
Yes, yes, that's right. Do you have any? just this? Okay.
Further questions? Any remarks from the Amana experts among the audience?
I expected you to ask me.
Hello, Nozomu. Thank you very much for this brilliant presentation. Regarding Ankh-Mart, it's actually an epithet of the solar god. So it's an assimilation of Akhenaten with the solar god. This is why he's using this epithet. As you know, we don't agree on every details of the reconstruction of the history of the end of the Amana period. I just wanted to ask you a question with a single word. Why? Why would Akhenaten elect Nefertiti as a co-regent? Do you have any clue or thoughts in this respect?
Yeah, this is a really important question, but I don't have an answer yet. But I think the Sumenkare was the first co-regent with Akhenaten, and he reigned very short time. After he disappears, Nefertiti took over as Neferneferuaten. And maybe, although we don't have the concrete evidence, but this situation is a little bit similar to the situation when Thutmose II passed away. We have Thutmose III, very young boy, ascended to the throne, while Hatshepsut became regent. But she actually gained the power. So Tutankhamun was already legitimate successor, I believe, during the time of Akhenaten, as we understand from his name, living image of Aten. But maybe Nefertiti may have functioned like Hatshepsut, but it was not like supporting the Thutmose III, because Tutankhamun was not ascended to the throne yet. But maybe they have to find a solution to rule the country after. And we don't know why Akhenaten had to have another ruler. And Nefertiti was already depicted almost the same size. Of course, Kia is also already depicted. So they share the kind of rulership, not just one king and the queen is subordinate. No, so they are kind of a couple, royal couple, supposed to rule the Egyptian kingdom. So, yeah, I want to ask you the same question.
Dimitri, you want to respond again? Or?
I think there's a big difference between the time of Hatshepsut and the time of Nefertiti, because Hatshepsut was regent for 7 years, or a little bit less than 7 years, and then she changed her status into a king, and this made obviously a lot of problems. And it was obviously also against Thutmose III, because she caused some of his cartouches to be erased. So there was some sort of aggressivity between the two of them. But if you think that Nefertiti might have been in the protection of Tutankhamun /Tutankhaten, why would she need to become a king? She could have done this as a queen mother.
Yeah, but she was already the king before.
Yeah. Hence my question. Why to elect her as a co-regent? Because, as you probably know, I don't believe in co-regencies. I think it's a construction of modern Egyptology. The only co-regency which is definitely attested in Egyptian evidence is the co-regency between Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, and it did cause a lot of problems, even for the glorious king who was Thutmose III. And another thing against co-regency, to me, in my own perception, is that we have some situations where you would like to have a co-regency, like Seti I trying to prepare the succession towards his son, the future Ramses II, but then they were never co-regent, which seems to indicate that it was not an institutional option for ancient Egyptian kings. But that's my opinion, and you probably know about it.
The next question.
That is exactly what I wanted to add. Dimitri saying that it's very difficult to believe in co-regencies, and I do wonder if all of this, what you suggested, Nozomu, which was very convincing, wouldn't work without co-regencies, because in the end, we must imagine Akhenaten introduced something totally new, never before existed in Egyptian history. And he was so much more than before, the intermediary between the divine world and the human world, that I think his successors definitely had problems to work without him, so that they mentioned him much longer than he actually existed. And maybe this is something we should really take in mind, that there is, a written continuation which is not reflecting reality anymore. I think this is something where we have to, as Egyptologists, where we have to open our mind, because this concept, as it was so new, had also other possibilities to develop. And I don't know if Dimitri agrees about co-regencies in the Middle Kingdom. We think they weren't there at all. So co-regency is not at all a concept in Egypt. And we are not, this shouldn't worry us much, because it simply wouldn't work. Two kings on the throne simply doesn't work. So think about it if it works without a co-regency.
Yeah, but why do we have the depiction of the two kings holding two hecascepter respectively and wearing the two crowns? Okay. So this is you think that one image is just illusion? No. As you said.
Yeah, it's no. No, I just suggest to Christian, those pictures are not photographic pictures. They are ideological projections. And we have references to previous kings. For example, we refer to Hatshepsut. We have foundation deposits of Hatshepsut from Del Bahari, where she refers in the same text to Mentuhotep II. So there's almost half a millennium between the two of them. It's not possible at all that they could have been co-regent. So you can refer to an ancestor just to set yourself into the tradition and so on. And I think here it's quite obvious in text as well as in images that Neferneferuaten wanted to present herself in the continuity of Akhenaten. It was one of the arguments of her legitimacy discourse. And it works. As Christian said, it works without the Egyptological hypothesis of co-regency.
I mean, just to the representation. Okay, we know that Nefertiti was elevated in status, but to a very similar identity to the king, but not a co-regent. So just very likely, but not really.
Yeah, I know, but there was kind of the phase. I mean, Nefertiti was already, you know, the great royal wife, almost equal as Akhenaten. But we have kind of phase, I mean, the development, both texturally and iconographically.
You know, there is a famous head at the museum in Hanover. Recent research, what Ray Johnson suggested is that there was a figure of Nefertiti being reworked with a chepresh to make her closer to a royal person. Yeah.
I know.
But this discussion very much underlines how intriguing all these evidences are. And maybe coming to the second part of your lecture, I think you very nicely demonstrated that there was no clear cut, that there was a smooth kind of integration of Amun again. I think it's very nicely also documented in the non-royal findings. But since you have a very thorough understanding of the entire treasure, and I know that you also very thoroughly studied other royal tomb equipments, namely the one of Amenhotep III, would you think that Tutankhamun's treasure also underlines that there is this transfer again, that you back to what has been before in a royal tomb, and that this is also kind of one of the evidences that there's a smooth transfer back to old traditions, not only being buried in the Valley of the King again, but also that tomb equipment relies to what have been the tradition before?
Yeah, I think we know there are some components of the funerary equipment, but I mean, in terms of the quality of the funerary equipment from the Tomb of Tutankhamun, they are much richer. I mean, most of them are gilded, unlike the previous 18th Dynasty royal funerary equipment. You know, they have just a black color, you know, over the figures of the gods, and so the use of the gold in the Tomb of Tutankhamun is extraordinary and unparalleled. If you compare the other royal tombs before him and after him. And since we don't know the set of the funerary equipment from the tomb of Akhenaten at Amarna, we can't really make a comparison what kind of equipment were actually interred. But we could understand, there was a kind of attempt to restore the conventional funerary equipment from the time of Amenhotep III and before.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any further comments? So I think we can wrap up. I thank you so much, Nozomu. This was a brilliant opening of the conference, and we